I get a lot of questions about the reassembly of these doors, all the different components that are involved and how to get them back in the proper order. So what I decided to do is take an old door and cut out the outer skin so that you could see the inner workings of the door. And what I'll do is I'll go through each individual component here and explain to you the order in which it needs to be replaced and any little tricks that I have in order to do that. So let's go through that now. I just want to give a quick shout out to Joe Jr. and Joe Sr. at Old Car Parts in Portland, Oregon for donating these doors to me. They were kind of trashed anyway, so there's no harm done on these doors. But they're the people to go to for the stuff that you can't find. So just a quick thank you to them, and let's move on. I'm doing a close-up on this other door so that you can see this track down in here. This track holds a little rubber scraper that looks like this. It's kind of a Y-shaped rubber, and what it does is it goes down into this track and it scrapes up against the window up and down just to mainly keep large debris from getting in the doors. It doesn't keep water out. Some people think that this is a rubber seal for water. It's not. You have weep holes at the bottom of the door in order to let water out of the door if it gets in. So all this really does is it holds up against the side of the window and goes up, you know, it kind of flaps up and down with the window as you're rolling the window up and down, and keeps the window kind of stable. But the good felt channels will do that as well. So I just wanted to show that to you real quick. The filling station sells this rubber, and it comes in a length long enough for the earlier doors and the later doors. So like the later doors from 51 to 55 first series has a vent window in it. So you would cut this shorter, and that would be plenty with the vent window. If you've got the earlier doors, you have there's no vent window in it, so this strip is going to go all the way towards the front and all the way back to the felt channels. The way I usually put this in is I start at this area right in the center, which there's usually a little bit of a flare out, and that allows you to get the rubber in there. So what I'll do is I'll start the rubber in that channel. Now picture this being all the way up to here, because this piece that I have is too short already. But basically what I'll do is I'll slide this in all the way up to where the felt channel would normally come in, and then you'll have this long piece hanging out here. And what I do is I will just take a flat screwdriver and just tuck it in. And it's not too hard to tuck in because there's plenty of room to get it in, but if you just kind of use your flat screwdriver to get it into that track, it'll go right in. And then you should have this rubber seal from the vent window post to the back of the door where the felt channel goes down inside the door when you're done. There's a certain procedure I like to use when putting these doors back together, and it basically runs from the back to the front of the door. However, the exception is the window regulator. Usually what I'll do is I'll put this window regulator in first, and then I'll move back to the door latch. And then behind here is the door handle relay, is what it's called, where the handle opens the door latch. I'll put that on, get that screwed in place. The next thing is your lower felt channel retainer, which is screwed in with 2 screws from the outside of the door. And I'll get that in place with the felt channel that goes down into it. Now there's a couple of kinds of felt channels that are usually sold in the reproductions. The ones that we use at the filling station are the rubber-backed felt channels. We used to use the cloth-backed felt channels, but there's just too many issues with those, so we went away from those and went to the rubber-backed felt channels, which are really nice, and they bend so easily, and they're just a whole lot better to work with. So we went away from those and into these. So the one problem with the rubber-backed felt channels is you used to be able to get this retainer in place and then slide the felt channel down into the little clip of this lower retainer. With these rubber-backed ones, I've tried it with silicone and everything else, and they just will not slide. So what I do is I put this together. I get this felt channel into this little clip at the bottom of this retainer and put it in as an assembly, and then just leave the felt channel hang out. It's going to be longer than necessary, so I leave that out until I get the vent window in place, and then I'll cut that off at that time. But the next thing after the latch, you put your latch in. After the latch, you get this retainer in place, and once you've got that in place, the next thing is the door glass with the sash channel attached to it. You've got to get it onto the roller of the window regulator when the roller is up, and then you can slide the window onto there. Now at this point you don't have the vent window in place, so it gives you plenty of room to get this door window in place and kind of slide it back into this retainer. Once you've got that back into place, then your vent window can go in, and usually it goes in from the inside of the door. You slide this post down in here, and this is your bracket at the base of the vent window. This is one of the parts that's really hard to deal with, because the only hole you have to get this bolt in is right in here. Normally you don't have a speaker hole in your door, so you've got to get your arm in here and get a 5/16/18 bolt up into this area with just your arm, and believe me, it's not the easiest thing to do. So what I've found works the best is I'll use a ratchet with a 9/16 socket on it and an extension that will get me down into this area. So you've got your ratchet hanging in here, and the extensions will get you, with the socket and everything, will get you right up to this bolt. And if you're lucky, you want to make sure, one thing you do is to chase the threads on this vent post nut. If you have to fight with a rusted nut here, you're going to hate life. So it's best to go ahead and chase the threads before you get this unit in place, because you cannot see very well at all inside this door once you're trying to put this in place, where this hole for this bracket is. And you can imagine trying to get your arm up in here and getting this positioned right over this bracket and then getting a bolt into it is not the easiest thing to do. So the idea of the ratchet with the socket extension on it and everything really helps in that case. Once you get it started, it's a piece of cake. You just tighten it up. And then there is a little adjustment back and forth in this hole, so you want to get that as tight as you can so that this window is captured both sides. Once you get that tight, this tight, everything's good at the bottom. So I'm going to simulate what you'll be dealing with when you try to get this bolt into this vent post. I've got a 6-inch extension and a 3-inch here. I've got my 5/16/18 bolt here, and it's actually a 1/2 inch socket. So I'll put that in the socket, and you're reaching up here like this, and I'm cheating right now, but basically this is what you're doing. And sometimes what I'll do is just take the ratchet off and just use this to tighten this up. Once you get it started, you're good to go, and that's why it's so important to have this thread really good. I even put a little grease on it to make sure that it goes in easy, because you don't want to be fighting it from this side of the door. So you get that started and get it snugged up. Once you got it snugged up, get your ratchet in there and just tighten it up. And that's all there is to the underside of this. So what we've done so far is we've put the window regulator in, the door latch, the lower retainer for the felt channel, and we left that long. and then we put the door window in onto the regulator. And now what I've done is I've rolled it down. So what we haven't done so far is actually installed the vent window. So once you've got that all in place, I roll this window all the way down so that I have enough room, and that vent window post, this piece down here, will actually be able to go down into this hole and get it positioned on this bracket. So at that point, you put your vent window in from the inside of the door, slide it down in here, and you've got to get those tabs. It's on the reverse side of this vent window, but there are tabs there that the screws go through to secure it. There are 3 of them here, and then there are 2 1/4-inch quarter 20 screws that bolt it down into the door here. So you've got to get those tabs up inside this sheet metal. So you wiggle that around, you get this up in place, and you get it all the way forward. And then you can screw those 3 screws in and the 2 on the opposite side of this. And that pretty much secures this. And then you've got to deal with this. Usually what I do is I will deal with this post, this screw first, because sometimes you need to manipulate this window in order to get this to line up. So get this bolt in first, get these screws in second, and that pretty much secures your vent window. And then the other thing I wanted to show you on this particular door, these are almost always gone. This is the door rest bumper. The filling station sells these bumpers, and they're, you know, if you feel down in the door there to this bracket or just look down from the top, you usually see just a hole here. So you'll want to get these bumpers and put them in place. It's not absolutely necessary to have them, but it does stop your window when you go down rather than hitting metal at the bottom side. And it puts the window in the proper place up at the top.